this little video is about putting the front timing cover seal on our Perkins 203 engine, a D4 203 engine, and on the front we have a housing that sits against the block here. It's a replaceable housing, and in that housing we have a seal carrier. Now some of the later engines you had trouble fitting the timing seal, and this is actually a really good idea the way they've done this. But there's a couple of little problems we've had, but look, nothing really serious. Now with this housing here, both I have a Sparex engine gasket set, and I'll just get the brake cleaner and I'll just clear a bit of that bit of the glue from fitting the sump off. We'll clean all this up. And I have a Sparex engine gasket set, and the Sparex kit did not come with this gasket, and it had a gasket originally. I took it off myself yesterday. I had to clean it off the sump. So the without a gasket, I've had a look and I'm comfortable to just use Loctite 515 in this position. So the seal holder, now where the seal holder goes onto the block, there's an O-ring. We've put a new O-ring on there that seals in here, and I've sat it all up, and the about 12 thou thickness of the gasket that I took off this surface here is not going to matter at all. So I am comfortable with doing that. So there was no gasket in the top here, or well, there was one gasket that you could cut the piece off for it, but I've done a bit of a test here, and when we hold the whole show up there together and bolt this in, we can get the whole show in without doing that, so that's okay. We're sort of comfortable with that. I'll take that out of the way just for the moment. Now on this seal carrier we can see there's a witness mark. Now yeah, you can just see it there, and if we have a look, it may be better from that side. It's not better from any side, Lance. But there's a clear section here where the seal sat. Then up the front here, there's around 6 millimeters where you can see the alloy has been stained a little bit. You can possibly see it just up in there. So with our seal, it's that tells us that where the last seal was, it was sitting on this back housing here. So it was closer to being flush with the back than the front, but with the seal being, what's that, 10 mil, and this being 1/2 inch, well, I think we'll bring the seal in until we come to that mark. Now, if you recall early in the piece, I machined we had a big groove in the pulley here, so I machined the pulley down, and I've actually fitted a sleeve and machined that down to size once more. So the seal will sit and seal on that okay. So it doesn't matter where we go here. If you were using a worn pulley and you had a little groove, well, there would be nothing particularly wrong with moving this seal in or out a little bit to get away from that wear mark. Now the spring, the garter spring here, always goes to the engine oil, so it will always go that way. I'll take this bolt out of the way. So I'll sneak off for a second. To put this seal in, all I'm doing is getting it started in the housing there. And look, you can nearly push it in. There's no need to put any glue on it. But I have a disc, and the disc fits inside the housing there just. So I'll just go and bump this down so it's nice and level, and I'll be back in a moment. Okay, there's my seal in. And so you can see there's a little bit at the back there. And the important thing with these seals is make sure you get them in true. So it's in evenly, so it's not sitting in the housing skewed. It's nice and square. It needs to be square to seal properly. So we got 1, 2, 3, 3.5 millimetres. 3.5 millimetres. So look, that's okay. We're happy with that. Now, with the O-ring sealing here, I'll just check that these are blind holes. So that's okay. Now, for the seal, we'll just get this ready. And inside the seal, I always put a little bit of grease, just for start up of the seal, just so it's got a bit of lubrication there. And in this instance, I'm going to put a bit of grease around the seal, around the O-ring I mean. And that'll help us slide it in, and we can probably put it together as an assembly anyway, save any fear of cutting it going in. And it's got a chamfered edge, we shouldn't be worrying about it I suppose, but who knows. So there you go, that's got the seal fitted. I may sit that in place. And these bolts, look, they're about 3/4 by 5/16 UNC. And if I just pop a couple of bolts in, a couple of little ones, well, I could put them all in. Oh, excuse me. Got dropsy again. So that'll go in, no worries. I won't tighten them up just yet. I'll wait until we've got all the housing, the bottom housing on and nipped up. So that's holding it all in place. Okay, we'll get this housing now and we'll plaster a little bit of 515 around it. So we'll holy dooly, plaster's the word, Lance. That will do. Stop that. Okay, so we'll spread this out a little bit. This is great stuff. It doesn't set hard until the air's taken away from it. And you can put a reasonably thick coat on. And if some of it goes inside the engine, it just dissipates in the oil and doesn't worry anything. So plenty of Loctite. Let's go. We'll pop some bolts in there. As with everything, get all of the bolts in before you tighten anything up. Looks like I've got to put a little tension on these bolts just to bring the housings a bit closer together so that the bolts will line up. See if that's any better. Yeah, that's okay. The bottom of the housing here is quite pitted, where I've cleaned it with the bead blaster, with some glass beads in the sandblaster. Doesn't matter though, like it's still plenty of housing thickness there to be strong enough to do the job. Get up there. And one last one here. They're UNF bolts, but I've put new spring washers everywhere. Okay, so what I'd like to do here is, same as on the rear engine seal, the rear crank seal, before we tighten anything up, we'll pull it back against the housing. And then we can pull him firm here while it can still move. So it can still move up, but it's held back against the sump there. We'll probably just nip these fellas up a little while we're going. And we're just pulling everything in together. These little snap-on pivot head ratchets are just a ripper tool. Okay, so we'll go around now and we'll just pull everything up firm. And this one, this side, oh yes I can. I thought I probably wouldn't be able to get the ratchet on. And last one. Okay, so what I'd like to do, we'll just nip these two top ones up until we can feel them go quite firm, and then we'll give these fellas some. And you can see the 515 oozing out. So we know we're good. We'll nip these fellas up. We'll get our trusty ratchet again. So if you need to replace this seal, you can just undo these 4 bolts after undoing the pulley, and this should come out. So when you're doing up these bolts, just make sure you can see a bit of gasket goo. If your kit's the same as mine that doesn't have these gaskets in it. And in this instance, I reckon the 515's every bit as good as the gasket. Reading on the container, it can take up to, I think it's 20 or 25 thou variance in housings, which is the job of your gasket anyway. So okay, so we'll run around all the bolts once more, just to check that we haven't forgotten anything, missed anything, stuffed the whole show up. These would probably be 20 foot-pounds or something if you put the clicometer on it. Lovely. Okay. Now the main pulley here, I'm just putting a little bit of grease in. We've put grease on the seal here, so I'm just putting a little bit of grease in on where the key goes and where it fits onto the crankshaft. Now the key, I can see down there that the key is still in place. Lovely. Okay, we'll clean the grease out of here. Now, with this pulley going right back against the timing gear, there should not be any way that any oil can get in to come out of this keyway here. But look, if you're in doubt, pop a little bit of goo on. Like a little bit of 515 on the washer. Look, it's one of those things, if it's not going to do any good, is it going to do any harm? No, it's not. So that's 1 1/8. I'll have to go and get a socket for that. But look, that's fitting the front crankshaft seal. We've just about got the engine buttoned up now. The next thing we'll do is the oil filter housing on this other side here. We'll run through that if there's anything else we have to do. I'll rattle this up with the nut gun off camera, save the noise, and yeah, look, we'll move along to something else.